Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadabhayam Tadadri Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Gurun Shri Yuttapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sakrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvedam Swavadudam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitam He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagarpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Sapta Kanjana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanostute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanjakalpatarubhyashta Kirpa Sindhubhayeva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Shashwin, for the Manglacharan. Today we have Shyamanand Krishna Das Prabhuji with us. Prabhuji has joined us all the way from Cape Town. Prabhuji, Danvat Pranam, and please accept our humble obeisances from everybody on behalf of everybody in this group. Prabhuji, we are reading the Bhagavad Gita as it is, and we are now on chapter 9, the most confidential knowledge. Text 1. Prabhuji, you lead and we will follow.
Okay, how wonderful that we're on chapter 9. Chapter 9 is very special, actually. I'm not going to read the verse immediately because I want to connect with what we studied in the 8th chapter. If we understand how things are put together, what the flow of verses are, then the verse meaning becomes much more deep, much more meaningful to us. So to connect this 9th chapter, we have to look back into the 8th chapter to see what we studied. So you may remember that there were two classes of personalities. 8th chapter was called Attaining the Supreme. So there are two classes of personalities who can attain the Supreme when leaving the body. One is the Yoga Mishra Bhakta. If he leaves at the right time, can actually leave the material world and go to the spiritual world. And the other one is the unalloyed devotee of Krishna. So these two are compared in the 8th chapter. And especially if we look back at 822, if you've got your Bhagavad Gitas, I hope you have, and look back at 822, which is really the springboard for this chapter. Because in the verses 17 to 22, Krishna was comparing the material and spiritual worlds, especially to give us the idea that we shouldn't really hang around here, actually. So in those verses, Krishna talked about how it is created and annihilated over and over again, actually. And that way, actually, we take birth many, many times. And it's not fun, actually. There are so many sufferings that we are forced to accept in this material body when we take birth. And we can understand from this discussion in 8th chapter how many times that happens over and over again. And even when the particular material universe we're in is annihilated, then we are reabsorbed back into the form of Mahavishnu, and we're held in a hibernative kind of state. And then again, when Mahavishnu breathes out, we are subjected again to the same process. So Krishna in this way is describing in one day of Brahma, there are 1,000 cycles of 4 ages. And this is going on over and over again. Whereas in the spiritual world, there's another unmanifest nature. This nature is manifest and unmanifest. And this other nature, the spiritual nature, is actually unmanifest in a different way, that we can't see it from where we are. So if we look back to 20 and 21 and 22, we'll find the springboard for this 9th chapter. After analyzing the material world, by human calculation, 1,000 ages taken together form the duration of one Brahma's day. That means 1,000 cycles of 4 yugas, and also such is the duration of his night. From the beginning of Brahma's day, all living entities become manifest from their unmanifest state, and thereafter, when night falls, they are merged into the unmanifest again. That's because when Lord Brahma is awake, then the material universe goes on, everything goes on very nicely. When he's asleep, and all the living entities go back into a state of hibernation. So if you know anything about hibernation, you'll know it's a sleep-like state and you can't do much, actually. So then again, when Brahma's day arrived, 19th verse, all the living entities come into being. And with the arrival of night, again, they're annihilated. So this is going on. So Krishna wants to compare that with the situation that a pure devotee experiences. Yet there's another unmanifest nature, because this is the spiritual nature, which we don't see in this place. That spiritual nature is the place where we belong, the place where we came from. Because we turned away from Krishna, we've come to this material nature. And Prabhupada says that our appearance here is time immemoria. Memoria comes from the Greek. It means no one can remember. It's not in anybody's memory. It is so long ago. Thousands and thousands and thousands of births. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it's described as Brahmanda Brahmite, going around and around, sometimes in a human body, sometimes in the body of a demigod, sometimes in the body of an animal. Brahmanda Brahmite, many, many births like that. So yet, this is 20th verse, yet there's another unmanifest nature, which is eternal and transcendental to this manifest and unmanifest matter, because the matter is manifest and then is withdrawn again into the body of Mahavishnu. So it's manifest sometimes and unmanifest at others. But the unmanifest state of the spiritual nature is a little different. That is there all the time, but we cannot detect it with our material senses. And that is why it's called unmanifest here. It is supreme and it's never annihilated. And the material world is annihilated, it appears and it disappears. Just like it's explained, the reflection of a tree in a pond after the rainy season. The reflection of the tree is there, but when the water dries up, the reflection disappears. Material world is like that, actually. It's there sometimes and not on others. When all in this world is annihilated, that part remains as it is. That which Vedantis describes unmanifest and infallible, that which is known as the supreme destination, that place from which, having obtained it, one never returns. So Krishna is describing the spiritual nature. And then the springboard for this 9th chapter is the next verse. That supreme personality of Godhead, who is greater than all, is attainable by unalloyed devotional service and by unalloyed devotion. Although he's present within his abode, he is all-pervading and everything is situated within him. So the clue is given here, actually. So if that Supreme Lord in his abode, which is never annihilated and remains as it is in that spiritual nature, then how to attain that abode? So Krishna is telling here, it is Ananya Bhakti. If you look at the Sanskrit, you'll see it's there. No? Labas twa Ananya. Ananya, it means not mixed. It's not mixed with anything. Just like the bell metal, and we ring the bell to make an offering to Krishna, the bell is a mixture of metals. Actually, the one metal which is mostly is copper, which is kind of a reddy brown color. And then the other metal, the main metal, is zinc, which is silver. But when you mix the two, you get this yellow color. If it's true bell metal, there are a few others as well, but it's mostly zinc and copper. So you get this yellow color. It's adulterated. It's neither the copper color nor the zinc color. So similarly, this unalloyed devotion, it's not mixed. We're studying that in the 7th chapter, the mixed devotees. They want relief from material distress. They want material wealth. They want knowledge. They're Mishra Bhaktas. And the 8th chapter, this other Mishra Bhakta who wants relief from birth and death was also explained. So that is the one class and attain the Supreme. But Krishna can be attained by unalloyed devotion. So the question arises then, what is that unalloyed devotion and how do we obtain it? So this is what is discussed. In the last verses of the 8th chapter, the two pathways, one in the light and one in the dark, are explained. But at the end of the chapter, Krishna explains the devotees are not disturbed by that. It doesn't matter when a devotee leaves their body. As a pure devotee is completely merged in consciousness of Krishna, and therefore it doesn't matter how and when they leave. But this Mishra Bhakta, who's trying to get release from birth and death, it matters when he leaves. That's when we've described in the light fortnight of the moon, in the time when the sun is in the north. There are different things described there, and the opposite when the sun is in the south, in the dark night, dark fortnight of the moon. So all these times, auspicious and not auspicious, but for a devotee it doesn't matter. So this 22nd verse especially is the springboard for the 9th chapter. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is greater than all, is attainable by unalloyed devotion. So therefore the question arises then, how can we get this unalloyed devotion? And also, just for interest's sake, we'll mention at the end of the chapter when Krishna has described these two pathways, and he says, the devotees are not bewildered. Although devotees know these two paths, they're never bewildered. Therefore, always be fixed in devotion. Because if we're fixed in devotion, as Krishna told us at the beginning of the chapter, we will attain his supreme abode, if we remember him only. So Krishna is advising, that's what we should be fixed in, not in our desire to enjoy the material nature. Because that way it will just, the cycle of rebirth will go on, trying to enjoy in this material nature. So Krishna is making a stark contrast that, if you have any intelligence, you should want to attain me. And how to do that? By unalloyed devotion. So the devotees know these two paths. The Yoga Mishra, who maybe can go back and maybe can't, depending on the time he leaves, but the devotees are not disturbed by that. And also, in the last verse of the 8th chapter, a person who accepts the path of devotional service is not bereft of the results derived from studying the Vedas, performance of austere sacrifices, giving charity, or pursuing philosophical and fruitive activities. All those things come automatically if we perform devotional service. So we're not the loser. I have a nice story to tell you about that. I'm sure you've all heard of Yudhisthira Maharaj, isn't it? I'm sure you've all heard of him. So Yudhisthira Maharaj was the son of Yamaraj. So he is, you could say, he's religion and religious principles personified. It is said that his enemy was never born. He was such a religious person. So he'd always abide by the direction of the scripture. So one time he came to Krishna and he said, Krishna, I want to ask you something. So Krishna said, sure, Yudhisthira, what do you want? So he said, Yudhisthira Maharaj told him, I want the most beautiful wife and I want the biggest kingdom. And Krishna was shocked, actually. He thought that Yudhisthira Maharaj was such a gentle person, not realistic or anything like that. So Krishna asked Yudhisthira Maharaj, why do you want those things? Don't you know that they're impediments on the path of devotion? So Yudhisthira Maharaj said, well, actually, I don't want people to think that if they worship you, that they will be the loser. And you see that Krishna granted the requests of Yudhisthira Maharaj. He was married to the most beautiful girl, and another name for it, she's Draupadi, another name for it is Krishna, because her complexion was darkish. When she was appeared from the sacrificial fire of Drupad Maharaj, it was explained that she is actually going to be the destruction of the entire Kshatriya dynasty because of she was so beautiful, actually. So he got the most beautiful wife, and also after the Battle of Kurukshetra became the ruler of the whole Earth planet. So he got his two requests, actually. So therefore, we shouldn't think that if we become devotees of Krishna, that there'll be a problem. Sometimes in Indian community, people say that, that we shouldn't worship Krishna, because he'll take away all your paraphernalia. We shouldn't think like that. It's true that Krishna will, if you are a great devotee, and Krishna may do that. He may take away all your material so that you will surrender to him. But we shouldn't think that when practicing that we will lose out by being devotees of Krishna. We won't lose out, actually. In fact, we'll do better if our lives are aligned spiritually, automatically material life will go better. Krishna may not make you a very rich person. We shouldn't pray for that also, because that can be a diversion from spiritual life. But we'll always get what we need, actually. Krishna actually says that in the 9th chapter. He says, I will maintain what you have, and I will carry what you lack. So we shouldn't feel we'll miss out being a devotee of Krishna. Okay, so now we come to 9th chapter then. The springboard, as I said, is that one who is an unalloyed devotee actually will attain my spiritual nature. So the question then is, comparing with that horrible description of the material nature, you know, birth after birth after birth, Brahma's day, Brahma's night, the total annihilation appearing again when Mahavishnu breathes out, so many births. Can you imagine the suffering you'll go through in all those births? So Krishna here is providing a contrast so that we will make the right choice. That's sometimes a very good way. Like I know as a school teacher that when you want a child to choose the right course of action, you offer a choice. You tell, okay, what do you want? Do you want to do this? In which case there will be negative consequence. Or do you want to do this? It's up to you. You must choose. So that when the child chooses, then they have the understanding that it's their choice, that either they get the punishment or the reward. Like that. So Krishna is giving stark contrast so that we will choose to go for the spiritual nature. So to do that, we have to become an unalloyed devotee. So how to do that? So that is what this 9th chapter is describing. And first of all, it's describing the glories of this pure devotional service. This is why it's called the most confidential knowledge. We've had confidential knowledge, actually. Confidential knowledge of the body and the soul. It's confidential knowledge. Not everybody knows that, actually. Even people who read the Bhagavad Gita don't know that necessarily. We've had confidential knowledge. We've had knowledge about Krishna, knowledge of the Absolute. We've also had some information on how to attain Krishna. No? So now we come to the most confidential knowledge. Why is it the most confidential? Because Krishna is controlled by it. He doesn't just give pure devotional service to anyone, actually. We have to convince him that we really love him. So this 9th chapter is talking about that. It is description of bhakti. When it says knowledge, it says the most confidential knowledge, the chapter, but actually when knowledge is used here, it means bhakti, because bhakti is the topmost. We learned that in the 6th chapter, that of all the yogis, actually the one who is residing in me, is engaged in my devotional service and very intimately thinking. He is the most intimately connected to me in yoga, and the highest of all, that is my opinion. So this is Krishna, what Krishna is saying. So these chapters are describing how we can become a pure devotee, so we can get out of this miserable place. So guess what? In the same way that in the 7th chapter, Krishna said, touch Trinam, hear. That is the principal way, actually, to hear about Krishna, actually, because when we hear about Krishna, we're associating with Krishna directly. There is no difference, actually. Krishna's pastimes and Krishna. Also, hearing Krishna's name, there's no difference. Directly Krishna himself. So in the same way, in 7th chapter, Krishna is saying, you hear from me. Also, the same is true in this chapter. In fact, we're going to analyze a little in a minute. We'll find the 7th and 9th chapters are very similar, actually, in their construction. Similar subject matters are discussed. But this 9th chapter is called the most confidential because it deals with unalloyed devotion. Devotion which is not mixed. Okay, so we'll read the first verse then, most confidential knowledge. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha.
Idam tu te guyatamam.
Idam tu te gunayatatmam.
Pravaksham yam yasuyave.
Pravakshyami anasuyave.
Jnanam vijnanam sahitam.
Jnana Vijnana Sahitam.
Yajgatva mokshase subhat.
Yajnatva Mokshe Subhat.
So this is a very wonderful verse, actually, because it deals with secrets. Actually, this pure devotional service is a secret. It's open to devotees, but it's closed to all others. So I read the word for word. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead said.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead said.
Idam.
Idam.
This.
This.
Tu.
to,
but,
but,
te,
te,
unto you,
unto you,
guyatamam,
Guyatanam,
the most confidential,
the most confidential,
pravakshami,
Pravakshyami,
I am speaking,
I'm speaking,
anasuyave,
Anusuyate,
to the non-envious.
to the non-envious.
Shri Krishna has previously said, those who are not envious of me can understand this knowledge. Those are my devotees. And Arjuna's case friend, that specifically, if you're envious, it's a disqualification for hearing about Krishna. You won't be able to understand. Jnanam,
Jnanam,
knowledge.
knowledge.
Vijnana,
Vijnanam,
realized.
realized.
These two words seem very similar, jnana and vijnana. Actually, vijnana means knowledge which is realized. It's not book knowledge. It's knowledge which is revealed in the heart. This is why Krishna, Srila Prabhupada here translated as realized, because it's revealed to us. It's not book knowledge that you can get by going to the library. Realized knowledge, so vijnana,
Vijnana,
realized knowledge.
realized knowledge.
Saitang,
Sahitam,
with,
with,
yat, which, gatva, knowing, mokshase, you will be released.
you will be released.
Ashubhat,
Ashubhat,
from this miserable material existence.
from this miserable material existence.
So this is the first point we have to realize, that this material nature is a miserable situation. Have you realized? If you can understand that, you should go like this. Have you understood this material world is a miserable place? There is some pleasure, but it's fleeting. It's very fleeting, actually. And the amount of pleasure is little. But somehow we somehow think that the next experience will be fulfilling, even though we probably had that experience before, and we know it's not. But we hope somehow that it will be. Actually, one friend of mine, when we were discussing this verse in another class, which we held live in a temple in Cape Town, it's called the Vishnu Mandir. No, not the Vishnu Mandir, sorry, the Radha Krishna Mandir, because there are deities of Radha Krishna there. So we were holding this class, we were discussing this verse. So this one lady told me, yes, but they don't know any better. They're trying to squeeze pleasure out of this material world because they don't know any better. So now you can't claim that. You can't claim that you don't know any better, because Krishna has been explaining. There is another pleasure, actually, which we obtain through contact with Krishna in different ways. So this miserable material existence, to get release, actually, which is what we want. Actually, that's really what we want, to escape this birth, death, old age, and disease. The only way to do that is to become Krishna's devotee. So that's the Guyatama that Krishna is revealing here. I mean, Guya means a secret, no? The most confidential part of knowledge. Why? This is how you get released. So the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, my dear Arjuna, because you are never envious of me, I shall impart to you this most confidential knowledge and realization, knowing which you should be relieved of the miseries of material existence. Actually, if we become a pure devotee, even while we're in the material world, we get released from those material miseries. What to speak of going to the spiritual world? So this knowledge is worth understanding, because actually that is what we want. We want freedom and we want everlasting pleasure, because that is the nature of the spirit soul. So in this chapter, Krishna is explaining that, how to become an Ananya Bhakta, a devotee is not mixed with any other desire except to please Krishna. Okay, well, the purport is quite long, actually. So we will discuss little by little, because if I read the whole purport, what will happen?
We'll forget the first part.
Yeah, or everyone will fall asleep. Right. So we take the purport little by little. A very wonderful purport, actually. Prabhupada here summarizes things up to this point as well. It's a very nice study. So I'm reading from the purport. As a devotee hears more and more about the Supreme Lord, he becomes enlightened. So I want to ask you, do you agree?
Yes.
Yes. The more we hear, actually, the more it develops our attraction for hearing. Because a little later in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that the devotees derive great pleasure from hearing about me and discussing about me. The more we hear, the more we become enlightened, and actually the more we want to hear. At the end of the Bhagavad Gita, Sanjay says that I want that this conversation between Krishna and Arjuna is making my hair stand on end. And in the 10th chapter, Arjuna says, the more I hear from you, the more I want to hear the nectar of your words. So this is the discussion of Krishna. Actually, it gives pleasure to the ear and the heart. And by hearing it more and more, we want to hear it more and more. So it's a very nice statement. As a devotee hears more and more about the Supreme Lord, he becomes enlightened, and we gain pleasure from that, actually. That is like standing in the shower, that is washing off the dirt as we hear about Krishna. Why? Because it's directly associating with Krishna. Krishna is absolute, and therefore everything about Krishna is the same as Krishna. So Krishna and his pastimes are the same when we hear about Krishna's activities, when we hear Krishna's holy name. Of course, we may not have the realization of that, but the scripture is telling us. That is why in the Kali Yuga we need this medicine, because the medicine has to be very powerful. Stage, everyone is very diseased. So you need a very, very powerful medicine. So the most powerful is to hear about Krishna. That is the most important thing. And that's what we find in this chapter. And if you turn back to the 7th chapter, you'll also see the same principle is there. How you can know me in full, free from doubt. Touch Trinu. You just hear from me. So Krishna is doing the same thing. No question from Arjuna as well here. Krishna is just going on. Okay, that Ananya Bhakta, the one who can get released from this material world very easily, doesn't have to come back. Who is that Ananya Bhakta? I'm going to tell you now. How to become that Ananya Bhakta, very important thing. Okay, second sentence. This hearing process is recommended in the Srimad Bhagavatam. When you become very much versed in Srimad Bhagavad Gita, then we want to graduate to the Bhagavatam. Because in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna only gives a few hints about himself. Just a few hints here and there. I'm the source of all the spiritual and material worlds. Here's how you can see me in the material nature. Just a few hints. I'm the source of everything, the spiritual nature and the material nature. Just a few hints and a little bit about himself, how he appears, when he appears, why he appears. But the thing is, if we ask you to stand up in front of many people and talk about yourself, how would you feel? Let's ask Smita. Smita, if we ask you to stand up in a whole crowd of people and talk about yourself, how would you feel?
I personally wouldn't feel very comfortable.
Yeah, you feel a bit embarrassed, no?
Yeah.
Also the soul of all good qualities. So he doesn't want to blow his own trumpet, So if we want to know about Krishna, who do you think we have to ask? Who do you think? Anyone can unmute themselves and tell me. If we want to know about Krishna, who should we ask? I almost gave it away.
Pure devotees.
Yes, we must ask his devotees. Therefore, if we read Bhagavatam, we find that we're hearing about Krishna from the devotees, actually. And the devotees love Krishna so much that they want to glorify him as much as possible, to tell you about his wonderful qualities, to glorify him, to tell you about his incredible activities, to actually show their submission and their willingness to surrender to Krishna and do whatever he wants, because he's just such an incredible object of worship. Actually, the only object of worship which is worth bothering with. So it begins with hearing. There are 9 processes, and of the 9, hearing and chanting are the most important. And of those 2, hearing is the most important. So we must never give up. And that is the characteristic of a devotee. You can ask yourself how you're doing in this way. The devotees never tire of hearing about Krishna. Never tire, actually. Why? Because that is the transcendental subject matter. That is like nectar to the ears. Rupa Goswami is one of our acharyas. He's a direct disciple of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He said, when I think about this chanting of the holy name, he says, I wish I had millions of tongues and millions of ears, so you could really properly taste the nectar. Because to taste the nectar of the holy name, 2 ears is not enough. We need millions of ears to properly taste that nectar. Of course, we may not be on that platform yet, but if we keep practicing, we will be. So we're hearing Krishna's names and hearing Krishna's pastimes. So therefore, Srimad Bhagavatam is saying the messages of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are full of potencies. Just by hearing it, you become a devotee. And gradually, we will increase in our devotion. And eventually, if we stick to this process of hearing and chanting, we will become a pure devotee and we will leave this material world. The messages of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are full of potencies, and these potencies can be realized if topics regarding the Supreme Godhead are discussed among devotees. That is what we're doing. That is Kirtika's mercy upon us, that she is the convener of this group so that we can discuss about Krishna between ourselves, because that process is full of potencies. It's like if you miss one class, how do you feel? Yes, exactly. If you look at Kirtika's face, it tells everything, because we get used to that. We look forward to it. We love to talk about Krishna. If we miss it, if we don't get that class, we miss it. We feel like there's something wrong. Something hasn't happened that should have happened. This cannot be achieved by the association of mental speculators or academic scholars, for it is realized knowledge. It is revealed. It's sometimes called realized knowledge, sometimes called revealed knowledge. Why? Because Krishna reveals to you on the basis of your willingness to hear the transcendental messages of Krishna and his devotees. So the more we hear, the more Krishna reveals to himself to us in the heart. So I'm going to the second paragraph. It's realized knowledge. It is realized in the heart when Krishna reveals it. The devotees are constantly engaged in the Supreme Lord's service. Of course, we may not be on that platform yet. We are practicing. When Prabhupada uses the devotee, it at least means a fixed up devotee. He means a devotee whose service is not broken like that. So our service may get broken. We may not be on that platform because now we are sadhakas. We are practicing devotional service. We are trying to come to the platform where it sticks, and we do it all the time. But right now, it may not be all the time. But those who, if we keep practicing, though, we will, like Prabhupada says, or even as a boy, I knew this expression. My father used to tell me before I heard it from Srila Prabhupada. My father used to tell me, practice makes perfect. I used to be crying over my sums because I couldn't do it. And my father would sit with me and explain, and then he'd go away and he'd tell me, okay, practice makes perfect. Prabhupada was also very fond of this saying, because that's what we have to do. Because trust me, when you go back to the spiritual world, everyone is absorbed in Krishna. So don't think that you do that hearing and chanting here and you go back to the spiritual world and you do something else. No, it's more of the same, actually. So therefore, we have to practice in this lifetime, especially hearing about Krishna. Hearing and chanting, hearing and chanting. So Prabhupada says, when Prabhupada says the devotees here, he means those who are fixed up. It's a stage called Nishta, which is kind of a little bit more than halfway up the ladder. That is the stage when your devotional service is constant and not interrupted. Nishta. The devotees are constantly engaged in the Supreme Lord's service. The Lord understands the mentality and sincerity of a particular living entity who is engaged in Krishna consciousness and gives him the intelligence to understand the science of Krishna in the association of devotees. This is a very, very important point. You can go away and study your Bhagavad Gita, on your own, but it is not the same as studying it in the association of devotees. Because in the association of devotees, there will be discussion. We will enter very deeply into it. And the devotees of the Lord are Krishna's internal potency. So it's a very, very important thing. Actually, in that we take the association of devotees regularly and we hear the scripture in the association of devotees. It is the primary thing for us to focus on, as much as possible, to be in the association of devotees and to accept that association favorably. It's no good being in the association of devotees and thinking, these people are just a lot of nonsense. That will not work. It has to be favorable association. This is why Prabhupada trained us that we should say Prabhu and Mataji when we address another devotee. because they are worshipable. They're Krishna's devotees. And who are we, really? Not really very much. Chances are that other devotees are better than us. So this association of devotees is very, very important. We cannot survive without the association of devotees. My spiritual master says you won't last 3 days without the association of devotees. We are dependent on that, actually, very much. So therefore, the Lord understands the mentality. If you're in the association of devotees, he understands your mentality. He reveals himself to you according to your mentality. You can't force Krishna. Krishna is only controlled by love, not by any. You can't perform all your charity or your austerities or study the Vedas. Krishna not very impressed by those things, actually. What he is impressed by is how much you love him, because Krishna actually is very lovable. That is what this chapter establishes. In this chapter, Krishna establishes himself as the topmost object of worship by comparing himself to other objects of worship. It's not that Krishna's got a big ego and he wants to prove to everybody that he's the topmost object of worship. He's doing that because he wants us to worship him, not because he needs the worship. Krishna is self-sufficient. He doesn't need anything from anybody. But he wants to convince us that, look, if you want to worship something, at least worship something which is the topmost object of worship. So that is what this chapter establishes. So that is our goal, actually, to become a worshipper of Krishna. Why? Because it's good for us. Because we'll be able to go back to the spiritual world like that. That is how to become an Ananya Bhakta, how to become unalloyed, that we only worship Krishna and nobody else. And with a full heart, nothing left out. So Krishna gives the intelligence. That comes in the next chapter, actually. We'll give trailer for the next chapter. There are 4 verses called the seed verses of the Bhagavad Gita. And in the third of those 4, Krishna says, I give the intelligence by which you can come to me. Because this Bhagavad Gita is not messing around. The Bhagavad Gita only describes your relationship with Krishna. Nothing else. No moral codes. It just discusses your relationship with Krishna. So these seed verses discuss that. How the devotees see Krishna, what they do as a result of that understanding, and how Krishna reciprocates. So this is how we develop our love for Krishna, and Krishna reciprocates by revealing himself to you more and more. When your love is 100%, Krishna reveals himself 100%. And actually, the more Krishna reveals himself, the more we fall in love. Because you can't help it. You can't help it. Krishna's just such a wonderful person. You can't help but fall in love with him. So this is our program. We want to fall in love with Krishna by practicing his devotional service. Discussion of Krishna is very potent. I think probably by now you'll have all understood that. That when we discuss Krishna, it has a deep effect on us, actually. It speaks to something very deep within us. It calls on the spirit soul directly, actually. It speaks to something very deep within us. Discussion of Krishna is very potent. And if a fortunate person has association and tries to assimilate the knowledge, and will surely make advancement towards spiritual realization. This is Krishna's promise and Prabhupada's promise. If we engage in this process, if we hear about Krishna and the association of devotees, we chant Krishna's name. Actually, I don't know if you've done that, if you've chanted in the association of other devotees. Have you done that? Actually, it's more potent. Sometimes we do that. Unfortunately, we can't do our Bhakti Vrikshas now because the COVID is doing its thing. But before that, in our Bhakti Vrikshas, that's what we do. We chant in synchrony, 1 round on our Japamala. It's an amazing experience, actually, because that you not only get the benefit of your own chanting, but you get the benefit of all the other devotees as well. So it's very, very potent, actually, to hear in the association of devotees. So discussion of Krishna is very potent. And if a fortunate person has such association and tries to assimilate knowledge, then he will surely make advancement towards spiritualization. Surely, without doubt, if we do this, we make spiritual advancement. Lord Krishna, in order to encourage Arjuna to higher elevation in his potent service, describes this 9th chapter, matters which are more confidential than any is discussed, because it's about Krishna. It's directly about Krishna. And therefore it speaks to Ananya Bhakti. It speaks to unalloyed devotional service. It's encouraging more and more about Krishna. That's what Prabhupada says, the first sentence. The more you hear about Krishna, the more we're impelled onwards like that. Our devotional service grows. So the third paragraph, the very beginning of Bhagavad Gita. So now Prabhupada is going to give a summary, a little bit of a summary looking back. Why is this the most confidential knowledge? Isn't what some of the other things have been revealed, isn't that confidential? Yes, it is, but this is more confidential. So Prabhupada is giving summary, looking back. In the very beginning of Bhagavad Gita, the first chapter is more or less an introduction to the rest of the book, right? It just gives some background, the Kurus are there, the Pandavas are there, Arjuna's reasons not wanting to fight. It's more or less an introduction. And in the second and third chapter, spiritual knowledge described is called confidential. Yes, the soul is separate from the body. It has its own eternal existence. The body is temporary by nature. It'll become food for worms or jackals. Actually, that's what will become, or other unspeakable creatures. That's what will happen to it. In the Christian burial ceremony, they say ashes to ashes, dust to dust. That's what will happen to the material body. So this is confidential knowledge. Then in the third chapter, how to work in a way which actually connects you with Krishna. Because in this material world, you have to work. So how to work in such a way that it connects you with Krishna is transcendental knowledge, actually. It's confidential knowledge. Not everybody knows these things. How to work in such a way that it can connect you with Krishna. Third chapter, the spiritual knowledge described is called confidential. The topics discussed in 7th and 8th chapters, they're the two we discussed previously, are specifically related to devotional service. How to see Krishna, And if we see Krishna, we would surrender. And then why don't surrender to Krishna? And then the classes of persons do surrender, and those who don't surrender, and those who surrender to something else. So Krishna is explicitly describing. It's more confidential, actually. It's knowledge about Krishna in relation to other things, in relation to the demigods, in relation to the material nature, so that we can get a clear understanding of who is Krishna, actually, knowledge of the Absolute. And in 8th chapter, okay, if this Absolute is so wonderful, how do we attain him? Krishna said, if you understand me, you can attain me at the time of death. How to attain? So it's more confidential. It's more confidential than just knowing we're spirit soul. Topics discussed in 7 and 8 chapters are specifically related to devotional service. And because they bring enlightenment in Krishna consciousness, they are called more confidential than just knowing you're not the body, how to connect with Krishna through your work. Because now we're finding intimate information about Krishna and his relationship to different things, material nature, the demigods, like that. Therefore, this is called the most confidential, because I missed a sentence out. They are called more confidential, but the matters described in the 9th chapter deal with unalloyed, pure devotion, not mixed, because Krishna is only attainable by pure devotion. One who remembers me alone at the time of death can attain my spiritual nature. Not one who's mixed, one who remembers me alone. So to not be mixed, we have to be a pure devotee. So that is what this chapter is dealing with. How to become a pure devotee. How to realize that Krishna is the only object of worship worth bothering with. How to understand Krishna's incredible opulence. And then to compare Krishna's worship with other things, like the demigods, the universal form of the Lord, and the impersonal aspect of the Supreme. All these things are discussed in 9th chapter. Okay. Therefore, it is called the most confidential, because it discusses Krishna's pure devotional service. One who is situated in the most confidential knowledge of Krishna is naturally transcendental. If you know that, if you live by that transcendental knowledge, that unalloyed bhakti, then naturally you're transcendental to this material world. He is therefore in no material pangs. Shotachina kangshati, Krishna says. He doesn't desire and doesn't lament, which is, let's face it, is most of the time what we're doing. We are lamenting for what we don't have or what we lost, and we're hankering for that which we want. That is mostly what we're doing. But a pure devotee doesn't have that. That is his characteristic, actually. He doesn't lament, and he doesn't desire to have anything. He has no material pangs, although he's in the material world. Why? Because there's a higher taste. He's connected with Krishna through devotional service, through a loving relationship. Therefore, he has no taste for the material things. In the Bhakti Rasamrita said that Bhakti Rasamrita is a book called The Nectar of Devotion, which is a book by Rupa Goswami. In this book, Bhagavad Gita, we're mostly learning that we need a relationship with Krishna. So once we get that understanding, then we need to develop the relationship. There are things we need to do. Like you have to buy your friends birthday cards on their birthdays. And if they're a close friend, you have to buy them cream cakes and take them to work and share with others like that. Because when the friendship is deep, then there's some exchange of love like that. No? When the friendship is deep, you can't just get away with a birthday card for a relative. They'll get upset with you. Where's my present? They may not tell you that, but that's what they're thinking. In the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, so this book, the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, is designed because when there's loving exchange, there has to be some activity. You have to do something. So that is the measure of love, actually. You can't just say, I love you. You have to do something to demonstrate that love. So that's called abhideya. That is what Rupa Goswami is describing, the activities for devotees, so that they can become completely immersed in Krishna and become Ananya Bhaktas. It is said that although one's sincere desire to render loving service to the Supreme Lord is situated in the conditional stage of material existence, he is to be considered liberated. He may be in the material world, but if he's rendering devotional service to Krishna with no desire for personal gratification, then we have to understand he's liberated. He's no longer in this material world. Similarly, we shall find in the Bhagavad Gita, 10th chapter, that anyone who's engaged in that way is a liberated person. Prabhupada's giving you trailer, what's coming in the 10th chapter. Because Arjuna asks, okay, if this devotional service is so wonderful, I've got to fight a battle. How will I remember you? And Krishna tells him 72 different ways he can remember him. So you're getting a trailer here. Prabhupada is saying, anyone who's engaged in that way is a liberated person, explained in the 10th chapter. We'll come to that. Now, in this first verse is a specific existence. The word idam jnanam, this knowledge, refer to pure devotional service, which consists of 9 different activities: hearing, chanting, remembering, serving, worshipping, praying, obeying, maintaining friendship, and surrendering everything. This is what Prahlad Maharaj told his father. What's the best of all the knowledge you've heard from your teachers? And this is how Prahlad Maharaj answered. Because these 9 processes will turn, if we practice them sincerely, will turn us into a pure devotee, and we will go back to the spiritual world. So of the 9, the 2 most important are the first and the second, hearing and chanting. Surrendering everything. That's like Bali Maharaj, for instance. He surrendered everything. Or Ambarish Maharaj is the example which is given. Surrender everything to Krishna. Krishna will take full care of you. You don't have to worry. The thing is, we need convincing about that. By the practice of these elements of devotional service, these 9 elements, devotional service, one is elevated to spiritual consciousness, little by little, step by step. No, it increases, it doesn't go backwards. You remember from 2nd chapter, Krishna says there's no loss or diminution. It doesn't diminish, it doesn't get less. As we advance, actually, you keep that. Sometimes we may walk away from it, but it's not lost. If we let go of devotional service for some time and we come back, very quickly we come to the point where we were before and we carry on from where we left off. There's nothing lost. It's unfortunately, material things are not like that. If you stop, you lose everything if it's not completed. Spiritual things are not like that. So therefore, one gradually develops Krishna consciousness. When one's heart is thus cleared of material contamination, one can understand this science of Krishna. It has to be washed off. Like, you see these rugby players. And I say that because in South Africa, it's very popular rugby. They will gather around the TV set when the South Africans are playing the British. And there's kind of some needle is there. But the rugby players, they get very dirty. So in the end, they all go in the shower and they wash off the dirt. It takes some time. So we're also in the shower. When we perform these activities, hearing, chanting, remembering, worshipping, obeying, becoming the friend, offering prayers, and we do these activities, we are in the shower. The material nature is being washed off to reveal what we really are. When one's heart is thus cleansed of material contamination, one can understand this science of Krishna. Simply by understanding that a living entity is not material is not sufficient. That's what Krishna explained in 2nd chapter, but it's not enough. Okay, we're not material. Great. Now what? What are we going to do with that knowledge? Well, we must have a source because we're very small. So who is that source and what's our relationship with him? So this is the thing that Bhagavad Gita is discussing. What is our relationship with Krishna? Who is Krishna? Who are we? And what's our relationship? That may be the beginning of spiritual realization. That's true, actually. When we realize we're not the body, that is the beginning. When we even get a theoretical understanding, it's enough to start us on the path. But one should recognize the difference between the activities of the body and the spiritual activities, one who understands that he is not the body. Because there are activities which are spiritual and there are activities which are material. Do you know how to tell the difference? Very simple test, actually. It's like they say the litmus test, you know. You take litmus paper and you put it in an alkali, it goes blue. You put it in an acid, it goes red. So they say there's the litmus test, you know, of something. It means like a very definitive test. Or they say the acid test. You pour sulfuric acid on gold, it doesn't react because it's a noble metal. But if you pour it on fool's gold, it does react. So it's called the acid test. So how do we know what's spiritual and what's material? Very simple test. If it's for me, it's material. If it's for Krishna, it's spiritual. It's a very, very simple test. Those things we do for Krishna are spiritual. Those things we do for ourselves are material. But we can spiritualize the activities we do for ourselves which are needed, like we need to eat. So how do we spiritualize that activity?
By offering food to Krishna first.
By taking Krishna prasadam. It becomes a transcendental act then, it becomes devotional service. It helps us to grow in our devotional service. So activities which are for the body and activities which for our real self, for the spirit soul, we have to know the difference. In the 7th chapter, we have already discussed the opulent potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his different energies, the inferior and superior natures. Do you remember that? What was the inferior nature? Krishna said,
material world.
Yes, earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. These are my separated material natures. And the superior nature?
Spiritual.
Yeah, it means the spirit soul. Krishna says another nature which is superior to this material nature, and it consists of the jivas, the living entities, their superior nature. And all this material manifestation, Krishna has described the whole thing. Now in chapter 9, the glories of the Lord will be delineated, and especially by comparing the Lord to other things. By comparison, we get to see which is greater. Isn't it true? If you compare fool's gold with gold, what do you find out? You know, we get the expression from that, all that glistens is not gold. Have you heard that expression? All that glistens is not gold. Because iron pyrite, it looks like gold to the untrained eye. But if you pour sulfuric acid on it, it reacts and you get a stink bomb because you get hydrogen sulfide from that reaction. It smells very bad. But on the gold, it doesn't react. It's a noble metal. So we have to know. We have to be able to discriminate. What is spiritual and what is material. So the glories of the Lord are delineated by comparison, by showing Krishna in comparison. Krishna does it himself. He makes the comparison because everybody has to worship something. We all worship something, isn't it? It may be money, it may be a member of the opposite sex, maybe a new car, maybe a big position, maybe worship personalities that we think are very worshipable because they're a big singer or a big actress or something like that. They're not actually worshipable because they can't reciprocate with you properly, actually. So we have to know what is the topmost object to worship. So the glories of the Lord are revealed in different ways by comparison with other objects, by seeing what Krishna does in this material nature. It's called the Aishvarya Gyan. You'll study that between verses 4 and 10. What Krishna does in this material nature. It's pretty amazing, actually. And then who Krishna is by comparing him with other persons. The Sanskrit word anasuyave in this verse is also very significant. Generally, the commentators, even if they are highly scholarly, are all envious of Krishna. Powerful statement, but true nonetheless. It sounds heavy, but it's true, actually. Confidentially, we have come to this world because we're envious of Krishna. We want Krishna's position. Why is it that Krishna has to be the center? Why can't I be the center? Krishna says, fine, you can, but you can't do it here. You can only do it there. You see that dark cloud down there? You can only do it there. But my advice is don't go there. But we want to try it out. That is our foolishness. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. So they're envious and therefore they can't get entrance. Krishna said, you're never envious. Do you remember at the beginning in the verse? You're never envious of me, and therefore I can explain this knowledge and only understand. But those who are envious, it's closed. It's just like if you meet a new person and you're envious of them and you're always backbiting them and denigrating them to your friends, and they get to know about that, how will they feel? Will they want to reveal themselves to you and become your friend? So Krishna is a person. He also has feelings, you know. If you're denigrating him all the time and pulling him down, and Krishna, I don't want to be your friend. Okay, I'll maintain you because I'm equal to all living entities. Why should I be your friend when you're criticizing me all the time? So that is the problem with these big Sanskrit scholars who comment on the Bhagavad Gita. They're envious, actually. We all are to some extent. Otherwise, what are we doing here? Even the most erudite scholars write on Bhagavad Gita very inaccurately because they're envious of Krishna. Their commentaries are useless because you can't understand Krishna through their commentaries. And the idea is to understand Krishna by hearing about him and chanting his glories. The commentaries given by the devotees of the Lord are bona fide. They're worth reading. No one can explain Bhagavad Gita or give perfect knowledge of Krishna if he is envious. When it criticizes the character of Krishna without knowing him is a fool. He's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. How you dare to criticize him? What a stupid idiot you are, if you do that. For one who understands that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the pure transcendental philosophy in these chapters will be very beneficial. Why? Because it will help you to advance on this path, which is what we're doing in this group, I hope. I hope you're coming to this group because you want to be a better devotee of Lord Krishna. So in this 9th chapter, you'll see it revealed to you so nicely, actually. Krishna's opulence, it's called the Aishvarya Gyan. There's some glorification in the next verse. And then there's a bit of a warning, if you're not faithful, you'll have to come back. And then there is such incredible knowledge of Lord Krishna, the Aishvarya Gyan, verses 4 to 10. And then in the latter part of the chapter, there's comparison of Krishna with other objects of worship. So this is what's coming. Anyway, I've kind of run out of time. So we will stop here and we will request for comments and realizations and questions if there are any.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, thank you very much. It doesn't feel that it was 1 hour. It feels much less. Feel I'm being cheated with time.
Actually, this is a very interesting thing you've pointed out, actually, because time is a material world consideration. Now, when we're studying together, when devotees are sharing together about Krishna, and if we focus and we listen with our hearts, time actually stands still. When performing devotional service, time actually stops if we're in good consciousness when we do that. So what you point out is proof that you're a great devotee, that your time stands still when we're discussing Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Prabhuji, Beena Mataji has a question.
Okay.
Beena Mataji, can you ask your question? And after that, Richa Mataji.
Thank you. Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. In the purport, it said that, I think you mentioned that if we are envious of Krishna, we come back to the material world. But is it also not our past karmas from previous lives that kind of binds us to the material world as well?
You see, your activities may generate a situation which makes it harder for you to be Krishna's devotee. That may happen, actually. But the basic qualification of all living entities to be in this material world is their enviousness. It is the basic. It may be hard to accept. I mean, when I first heard this, I thought, that's not true. I'm not envious. I'm not really an envious person. And especially now I'm trying to become a devotee, I can say I'm envious. But the thing is, that's true, actually, that we are. We're kind of a little bit jealous and, how come Krishna gets all the fun, and he's in that topmost position. But it's also true that the activities we perform may make it hard, the karma may make it harder for us to give up that enviousness. But it's also true, thankfully, that there's no impediment to devotional service. So if we take it up from whatever position we're coming from, it will very quickly actually bring us out of that situation into a situation where it'll be easier to practice. Like, for instance, there are some very big demons who were devotees. Can you think of any, Bina, big demons who became devotees? They were born in demon families, but they became like Prahlad Maharaj is one.
Yes, Prahlad Maharaj. But
Yeah,
he-
Prahlad Maharaj is born in the family that died. So it doesn't matter what our position is, actually now. If we take to Krishna's devotional service, then our enviousness will automatically begin to reduce. It won't bother us so much, actually. And especially if we come with an open heart. So it's true that somebody may be coming from a position where the results of their activities make it harder. But it's also true that very quickly, actually, if we take to the process sincerely, very quickly things become easier. Because there's no material impediment to devotional service. It can't be held back. So your point is true. The karma may make it harder to become Krishna's devotee, but if you start, very quickly it becomes easier and easier and easier.
Mm.
Is that all right, Rina?
Yeah, I just found it very hard to reconcile with the fact that, because
Yeah.
after all, he's our father, isn't he?
Yes, that's true. How can we be
And
envious?
to be envious, it's just very hard to imagine that someone can
To
be
imagine.
envious of
But actually we are. Because,
he's
you know,
so full of compassion. So
but we want to
how can
enjoy
we-
separate from Krishna.
How can we
We want to
how
enjoy.
can we be envious of someone who's
Yeah,
so
because the thing is, we want to be Krishna a little bit. Otherwise, why is Krishna giving us this situation? You want to be like me? Okay, you can go to this place and you can be the center of attention. The only trouble is everybody else wants to be as well. So how come we wound up in that situation? Because Krishna gives free will. So how we end up in this situation where we want to be the center? Do you see, Veena?
Mm.
It's that everybody wants to be the center of their universe, isn't it?
Yeah. I see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But actually, in the spiritual world, Krishna is the center of everything because he's the most worshipful object. So if we have come to a situation where we want to be the center, there must be some enviousness. Why Krishna is the center? Why I can't be the center?
Yes. Okay.
Not very nice.
Hmm.
That's the problem with it. Do you see, Veena?
Yes. I see that to a point. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Okay, you're welcome. And then,
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, pardon me. I want to share my realization on the same topic, and then probably Richa Mataji can ask her question if you can allow.
oh, you naughty girl. Richard had a hand up first.
Okay. Richa, can you please ask your question?
You know, hand up the whole time. I'm going to stop you.
Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranam to everyone. First of all, I have a comment. Like, Prabhuji, I'm really so happy listening to you. Like the way you explain, it's really joyous. It gives me like better understanding. And first of all, I feel really peace listening to you. Like not even for a second I would ever get lost. I would have when listening to you. So Dandavat Pranam to you for that.
See, the thing is, okay, we are simply repeating what Srila Prabhupada has told us. And because Srila Prabhupada is a very, very special pure devotee, even if we just repeat what he's taught us, automatically you feel that potency of Srila Prabhupada. Actually, that is our only qualification, that we're simply repeating what we've heard. And I feel very happy to know that it's touched you. And it's hopefully...
Because like we actually just read in the paper that Bhagavad Gita is not something that we can understand all by ourselves. Like
Yeah.
I always had the thing in my mind that whenever I read, I am understanding. Like before when I started, I was understanding. I always had that thing, okay, I understand. Why do I have to like ask someone? That's why I never had questions. But when I started listening, when I started understanding, hearing from people, I started getting questions that this was not what I was thinking. It was really different.
Exactly. Because if we have to be taught, the devotees have to help us to understand Lord Krishna, actually. Because the thing is, we're coming from a position where we're envious. We're jealous of Lord Krishna, actually.
Yeah.
Very nice comment, Rick. Thank you very much.
I actually had a question.
Okay, shoot.
Just 1 minute. Sorry. Yeah, my question is that we see so many times that actually good devotees who have been in Krishna consciousness for a while, they literally have all the absolute knowledge. They are like aware, even conscious mentally, materially, physically, all the ways. But still there's a point where they fall down. They really fall down just because of they have attachment towards other people. This is like a personal experience that they have attachment, they get attached to other people. And when those people try to explain them that, you know, my priority is Krishna, yours should be the same, and then we can help each other in it, then they start feeling bad about it. And like they really catch feelings about it. So how do you try to deal with such situations? Like, I don't understand.
You see, the thing is that when we try to become a devotee, we have to recognize that the people around us have free will, and they also have a choice, you know, whether they're going to pursue devotional life or not. And we have to be sensitive to that when we deal with them. Because you see, Krishna doesn't force anybody, no? Do you see that Krishna knocked on your door one day and said, Rika, I want you to become a richer, or Rika? Do you pronounce it Rika or richer?
It's Rita.
Oh, it's Rita. Okay. Rita, Krishna doesn't come and knock on your door and say, you know what, you have to become a devotee. Doesn't do that, no? So when we practice, we have to be careful to respect the free will of others. Krishna respects it, so why shouldn't we? We can offer, you know, we can offer an entrance into Krishna's devotional service, but we shouldn't force. We shouldn't try to browbeat or trick, or, you know, somehow or other, by hook or by crook. We should offer it to others, but we have to also respect the fact that they have free will, and it may not be the right time for them now. That might be the right point in their life, or maybe they're just not ready. Like that, you know? Is that helpful?
Yeah, and actually I had one more question. That how do you understand in yourself if your bhakti is fake or real? Like, are you trying to pretend it, or it's really naturally coming from you, within you? Because this is actually a personal experience that when I started in the beginning, I felt it was really heavy. At some point, I was really happy. Then I felt it got really intense on me, and for which I fell down. I stopped chanting, stopped going to temple. I got back to my friends, and again I got back to Krishna. After that, I took it like I understood that, okay, I've been taking it so fast. I guess I was pretending, and I don't know what was happening. It took me a while getting back to my normal routine with Krishna, accepting him, letting him in my life again. And there are so many experiences in your life for which your faith just goes up in so many things. Like, you don't believe in the existence of goodwill anymore. So how do you know that if you're on the right track and your bhakti is right, or is it pretending or faking, or whatever words we can use?
Okay, see, some of it you will know internally. Sometimes we know when we're faking it. We know, actually. We know we're pretending here because it looks good. So some of it you'll know internally. And some of it you'll know by the way that the devotees deal with you. Actually, what is the proof that Krishna is, you know, accepting our devotional service? And the answer is that the devotees are accepting it. So the way that we deal with devotees will also give us, will like hold up a mirror to us. And we'll be able to see by the way we deal with devotees, whether it's fake or not. Are we authentic when we deal with devotees? Are we open with them? Or do we hide, or do we pretend? Actually, another thing I wanted to mention to you, it's like when we go away, we're performing Krishna's devotional service and we're associating with devotees, and we go away, it may be because of offenses. That's one reason that we may go away. Because, you know, all these personalities are trying to be devotees, you know, they're exalted, actually. They're doing the best thing in life. So if we make offenses, then we may go for that reason. Or we may go, as you rightly said, because our material attachments overcome us. You know, we just get too attached to different things and we go away. So this is something important to remember. We should be careful not to commit offenses, no? And that's a whole discussion in itself. I don't know if we have time for that. But then to understand whether we're authentic or not, you can do that by understanding how much taste you have. If you're pretending and it's not real, you will not have taste for hearing about Krishna, for associating with Krishna's devotees, for seeing the deity form of the Lord, participating in the kirtan, these things. You may do it mechanically, you won't have taste. But if we're authentic and we're real, and we're doing it from our heart, in the best way we know how, you will feel it in your heart. You'll feel authentic, that it's real. But if there's no taste, then we can understand that there's something wrong. We're not doing something right. We may be pretending. We may be committing offenses. We may have too many attachments to the material nature. So the internal taste is the measure. It's like a dipstick test. In the engine, they have a dipstick. They put the stick in, they pull it out, and you can see how much oil is in the sump. So your dipstick is how much taste do you have to hear Krishna's name, to hear Krishna's pastimes, to associate with the devotees, to hear the scripture, to see the deity, to participate in the kirtan. So the test is the taste that we have. How much do we want to do those things? So this is one way, one very powerful way of understanding, are we fake or are we real? Is that helpful, Rita?
Yeah, it is. It is a lot more helpful, because I always had that question, that battle in my head and my heart. If I'm really doing it or I'm pretending, will I fall? Questions.
So the test is how much taste do you have to perform transcendental activities, chanting on Yamala, taking prasadam, associating with the devotees, hearing the scripture. The more taste we have, then the better we're doing. And if the taste has disappeared or is getting less, we must look around in our devotional service and see what we're doing wrong. Are we chanting inattentively? Are we offending the devotees? Are we considering the demigods to be on the same level as Krishna? Are we disobeying the orders of the spiritual master? Are we blaspheming the scriptures? Do we think that the glories of the holy name are imagination? We have to examine those things and find out what's wrong. Because this process, and actually it's interesting, the next verse says this. The next verse in this chapter is a glorification of devotional service, pure devotional service. And one of the things it says is susukam kartayam. Susukam. It means very, very happily performed. Devotional service is very happily performed. So we're performing devotional service and not happy. What can understand? Can understand there's something wrong. I'm committing offense and not doing it properly. So this is the test. How much happiness do you feel? What is your taste for performing these things? Is it all right, Richa?
Yeah, of course it is. So does this also include that standing up for things when it's like going wrong way? Does it even include being a part of a good devotee? Because we are generally told not to be violent and not to use devotees or different people, but when you have to really stand up for the wrong things, does it even count as a part of it?
No, you see, when the thing is that we can't neglect ordinary moral principles and think we can be a devotee. Actually, the devotional practices are built on top of ordinary moral and social dealings. So, for instance, if we see something is wrong, and we're in a position where we should do something about it, we shouldn't neglect. We should actually be prepared to, stand up when something is wrong. We can't say we're a devotee and then just ignore all the ordinary moral and social principles. Did you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But at the same time, we do have to be careful that we do it in such a way which doesn't damage our own devotion. We have to be very mindful of that. Therefore, there's something called etiquette among devotees. Even devotees may do something wrong sometimes, but there's a right way of dealing with it and a wrong way of dealing with it. And we have to be careful about that so that we don't damage our own devotional service and we're pointing out something which isn't right. Is that okay, Richard?
Yeah, it is. Thank you so much.
Sorry, Mother Kirtika, I cut you off there.
It's okay, Prabhuji. It was just a realization, but we have another question
Okay.
from Avinash Prabhuji, and he says, our ego is such that we don't find fault in ourselves. At times we offend unknowingly, but hard to realize. Is having a guru a solution?
Yes, because the thing is, when we want to learn any subject matter, we need a teacher, even materially. You know, you can go and buy all the medical books in the marketplace and you can study them all. And you can go to the hospital and say, look, I've studied all the books. Will they accept you as a doctor? They won't accept you because they want to see the proof that you've studied under accredited teachers. They want to see that proof. So similarly, when we're trying to be a devotee, we need a teacher. We need somebody, our hands are tied to the material nature. We need to be taught by somebody whose hands are untied. We need a guru, yes, we need actually. And then there are different types of guru. There is Diksha Guru, the one who connects you formally. And then there are Shiksha Gurus, ones who give you instruction. There's the Padma Pradakasha Guru, the one who introduces you to Krishna in the current life. And there's also the Chaita Guru, Krishna in the heart. So yes, we need all that help actually to become a better devotee. We need that teaching because we don't know. We're floundering in this material nature actually. So it's the same. When you go to a university, you have to submit to the teachers. Otherwise, how will you get your degree and become qualified? So similarly, we need a guru to understand these things. Now, yes, in our ego, we don't find fault in ourselves. We find fault in others. But that's the difference between spiritual and material. Again, that when we are spiritually minded, we don't tend to see the faults of others, but we see the faults in ourselves. But when we're materially minded, we don't see the faults in ourselves, but we see the faults in others. So in that way, the spiritual is often the antithesis, the exact opposite of the material. So when we become spiritually advanced, we become very expert at seeing faults in ourselves. We feel like we're full of faults, actually, when we become advanced spiritually. Is that all right, Avinash?
Thank you, Prabhu. Yeah, that's nice.
So
Thank you for your
Avinash,
class again. Very nice.
Avinash, you should be looking for guru.
I'm trying to aspire for one, and yeah,
Can
hopefully
I offer you,
with
can
your
I offer you
blessings.
some help? Can I offer you some help?
I'm aspiring from Radhanath Swami.
That's so wonderful. So you feel convinced that he's your spiritual master, yeah?
Yes, yeah, that's right.
That's so wonderful. So just keep it up then. I'm sure you'll become initiated disciple one day.
Yeah, hopefully. With your blessings, Prabhu.
Whatever little I have, you can have. I don't know if it's very much, but anyway, whatever little I have.
Thank you.
Kirtika, you wanted to say something, yeah?
I wanted to say something, but Beena Mataji has raised her hand. Let her have
No,
that.
but you were before Beena Mataji.
Yeah, no, you go and share your realization with us, please.
Yes, please.
So this is a story and it has happened to me, and I'll cut it short. Usually I thought it would take a long time. So I live in Kenya where there are 16 houses and everybody has gardens in front of their house. And my neighbor has a beautiful garden in front of her house. And every day I pass through it and I admire it. And I say, wow, I'm so blessed to have a neighbor like that with such a nice garden. Mine is okay. I mean, it's not bad, but it's not as wonderful as her. So every day it's admiration and saying hello to her and how good it is. But at the same time, this was a year ago, and I said, Krishna, I mean, and that's the time it was revealed to me that I was envious of Krishna, and that's why I'm here. And I said, I can never be envious of anybody, and I can never be jealous of anybody. I mean, that thing doesn't exist in me at all. And Krishna, you can't say this to me because I don't have that quality. And I was at war with him. And then after a week, I just suddenly felt my garden should look better than hers. I'm not a gardener. I have no interest in gardening. I love her flowers and I have them because they are just next to me and I can just open my window and see them and pretend that that's my garden. But I had this sudden urge of beautifying my garden. I got a landscaper. invested a lot of money in that patch. Obviously, it was not as good as hers.
Yeah.
Suddenly, I stepped back and said, hey, what am I doing? What am I doing? I mean, I really don't need to do all this and change
Yeah.
and have a rock garden and things. And there was never this desire in me to beautify this. Whatever I have is beautiful and I'm happy with that. But it was just
Interesting.
Krishna showed it to me that
Yeah.
you are envious and this is how it is. And now
Actually,
I have a small patch that I haven't
yes.
grown anything, just to keep on reminding me, envy, this is envy, this is envy. So
Actually, envy has another meaning as well, which is there in the original meaning of the word, but has gone out over the years. That meaning has disappeared. Now people think that enviousness means just jealousness, but it has another meaning as well. Actually, enviousness is when we hate something or somebody for no good reason. We just hate them because they're who they are. You know? That is another manifestation of enviousness. We dislike somebody and there's no good reason for it. That is another manifestation of envy, actually.
And I was getting there, Prabhuji. I was getting there. So, and this
Don't
was
worry.
just a glimpse of what I am inside me. That
Don't
Krishna.
worry, Kitika, we're all like that. You know, I can admit to that as well. That otherwise, why are we here? You know, we're envious. If we have trouble with another human being, it means we're envious because they're all Krishna's parts and parcels. So why would we have a problem with another human being? Or even the animals, for that matter, they're also spirit souls.
How ugly are we?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, I think Venus' hand was up first and then Pramila.
Yeah. Prabhu, I was just wondering why, you know, this chapter is called The Most Confidential Knowledge. And I was just wondering, why is Krishna saying that this unalloyed devotion to him is the most confidential? Why is it most confidential?
Why is it confidential? Because it's confidential, but Krishna doesn't just give it to anybody. It's very confidential. Why? Because the pure devotee actually controls Krishna through it. When the devotion is pure, Krishna becomes sold out to that devotee. And if you don't believe me, just look at Mother Yashoda chasing Krishna with a stick. I mean, that's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and she's chasing him with a stick. And he's crying. And he's rubbing his eyes, and the mascara is going everywhere. And he feels the fear. His eyes are filled with fear. And the mascara is being rubbed everywhere, all over his face. Krishna actually feels the fear. And, you know, in Arjuna's case, who've been studying Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna tells Krishna, just take the chariot between the two armies, will you? This is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he's telling. Krishna says, okay, fine, let's go. Krishna gives himself to his devotee, and therefore he's careful who he gives pure devotion to. He doesn't just give it to anybody. That is why it's confidential knowledge. Because through the pure devotion, not only does the devotee give himself or herself to Krishna, but Krishna gives himself completely to the devotee.
Right, okay. So
that's why it's called the most confidential knowledge.
So that was nice to know from you that he becomes...
Krishna gives himself to you completely. Completely. Doesn't leave anything back. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, I really like the story about the friendship between Sudama and Krishna.
Yeah. He put him on his own throne and worshipped him. He told Rukmini, go get the arti set. And then he took the water, and what did he do with it?
Oh, right. You mean the washing feet?
Yeah, he took the water from Sudama's feet and he put it on his head. And what can I do for you, my dear friend? What do you want? What can I do for you? And Sudama was sent by the wife. You know that, no?
Yes.
Actually, Sudama wasn't thinking to go ask the Lord for anything. But even though, you know, he went back to his village, and what did he get?
Everything that's more than his...
Everything the wife wanted and more, actually. So that's Krishna. When you give yourself to Krishna, he gives himself to you completely. And even Rukmini Devi had to stop him. Don't eat any more. She told him, don't eat any more, because if you eat any more, you'll never be able to repay him. It'll be impossible. So this is Krishna. That's why it's called the most confidential knowledge, because you literally capture Krishna through confidential devotional service. Okay?
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, finally we come to Premila. I'm sorry, Premila, you had your hand up so long. No?
No, not at all. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Such a nice discourse. I love listening to you. I wanted to know, is it a common feeling as we develop or try to tread a bit more on the spiritual path? I find that, certain conflicts I had in the past, which were probably deeply embedded in me, and I forgot about them, but they have been coming more to the surface, and it makes me feel quite guilty when I think about those conflicts I had. And I'm wondering, is this a common feature of what happens as we try to tread on the spiritual path, or is it a problem with me?
Premila, do you ever make ghee from butter?
Well, I haven't made it, but I think I've seen my mother do
You've
it.
seen the process, no. So as you heat the butter to turn it into ghee, what happens?
It gets sort of hardish.
Well, actually, things come to the surface. Have you noticed that?
Yes, it's not bubbling or something like
Yeah, and
that.
things come to the surface. So our devotion is like that as well, actually. You know, when we begin the process, actually, then our natas become revealed to us. You know, and if we keep practicing, gradually they go away. But in the beginning, we're thinking, you know, I'm such a wonderful person. How can I possibly be envious of Krishna? I'm such a nice person. Just look at my garden. That's what we're thinking. And then as we practice, you think, oh my God, you know, I actually am envious. I'm really, God, I see the way I dealt with that person. That was really nasty. What did I do that for? Oh my goodness, you know, I'm coveting what this person's got a new BMW or an Audi 5, and I'm wishing I had it. So this is what happens. Our natas come to the surface. They become revealed to us. It's explained actually by another great spiritual personality in our movement. He said it's a bit like, you know, you have a brass pot which has been kept in your attic for like 50 years. And you know what happens to brass if you don't clean it, right, Premila?
Yes, Prabhu.
What color does it go?
Kind of yellowish almost.
Yeah, it goes dark. And then gradually it goes darker and darker and darker. And in the end, you can't even tell it's brass. So when we take up the process, it's a bit like getting your brasso. I don't know if they sell brasso where you live.
Yes, they do.
Okay. You take your brasso and you take a piece of cotton wool and you begin to clean, you know? And then you take a piece of cotton wool off and you see that the real color of the brass underneath. And what do you feel? Yeah, exactly. If you watch Kirtika's expression, oh my God, it's so dirty. Well, so that is what happens in devotional life. When we begin to clean, we realize, oh my God, it's so dirty, you know. Like we clean a little bit and then we realize. So this is a very nice sign. When we feel that there are faults in ourselves, that we feel, my goodness, I've got work to do. That is a very good sign, actually, when we become aware of our faults. It means that we are making spiritual progress. But obviously, you know, it's like, I don't know if you've heard of this Dr. Phil. You get him where you study Dr. Phil. He says you cannot change what you don't acknowledge. In other words, that's the first step. The first step is to realize we're dirty. Isn't it, Prema?
Yes, yes, Prabhuji.
Change what you don't acknowledge. So then we acknowledge, wow, I'm dirty. And then we have to do something about it.
Yes.
Ourselves. My goodness. You know, when we fly off the handle with the person at work, you know, we have to catch ourselves and thinking, my goodness, this is not good. You know, Krishna wouldn't like this. So then we have to catch ourselves and do something about it. It's true that the process of devotional service will purify these things, but there's no harm in catching ourselves out and doing something about it as well.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Prema?
Yes, thank you so much, Prabhuji. Okay. I also feel really bad to know I was envious of Krishna.
Yeah, me too.
Me
When
too.
I found that out, I felt like, my goodness, it's like, you know, I cleaned a little bit of the pot and I took the cotton wool off, and then you see the bright yellow color of the brass, and you see the dirtiness of the rest of the pot even more.
Yeah.
It's that kind of feeling. Isn't it right, Premila?
Yes, Prabhuji, definitely.
So
Thank
we
you.
must do something about it, Premila.
Yes, I'm trying, Prabhu.
Okay, that's wonderful. If you try, that's enough.
And the only thing is, Prabhuji, sometimes I feel like, I think it was Richa Mataji was saying, sometimes, I feel I'm trying quite hard. And then I think Maya tries to really pull me away and distract me. And I can feel it. Go away, Maya. You are just trying to disturb me.
Yeah. See, unfortunately, Maya is specially trained by Krishna. You know what she does? She's not interested in the 95% that you love Krishna. She's not interested in that. She's interested in 5% of your attachment to the material nature. She's a bit like a karate trainer or a judo trainer, By practicing with the judo trainer, they throw you on the floor. They find your weak spot and they throw you on the floor. So that is what Maya is doing. She goes after our weak spots, actually. And that's good for us in one sense, because then we find out what our weak spots are and we can do something about it. All right.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
She's Krishna's emissary, She's the keeper of the prison house. It's kind of interesting that service is given to a Mataji.
And she does the job very well. Any
service. Does her job very well.
There's no escape.
No, you have to be pure. But actually, if we become pure, then she helps us to go to Krishna, Actually, by showing us our anatas and the dirt in our health, she's helping us to go to Krishna. Those become stepping stones on the path towards Krishna, actually. Okay, I wonder if we're done. I have some more questions, but it won't take more time. If anyone will ask next time, Jupra, I think you're in Dandavat Pranam. Okay. You can give, actually, anyone who wants to ask questions, you can give my cell phone number and they can contact me on WhatsApp. And anyone who wants to do that, they're welcome. If there are questions we can't answer, because it's already 9:30 and I'm feeling like I should release you now.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, I'll do so, but we all benefit when it is asked in this group.
Yes, it's good we ask in this group, yeah.
Yeah, but Prabhuji, can you take one more question?
I will take questions as long as devotees want to ask them.
Okay, so then I'll ask my question and then Rita Mataji can ask hers and others will stay on if they want to.
If they want, yeah, anyone who wants to leave can leave. Don't feel shy, we won't be offended.
Yeah. So my question was, I was talking to a devotee who was trying to suss out what Krishna conscious was, and she's actually a devotee for Mataji, so she worships in Mother Durga, and she says, oh no, Krishna Bhakti is too difficult. That path is very difficult. He takes away everything from you. He takes first your material possessions, then he takes us and you will become mad. Do you know what you are doing? Are you doing the right thing?
Some people believe like this, yeah.
Yeah, so I was a little shocked because I've never had that reaction from anybody. And then she said, look at that person who's a devotee and everything of hers is lost. And look at that person. So you better tread on this path carefully.
Yeah.
So really, I am not.
How do you deal with that? Yeah, how do you deal with that? You see, Krishna is a very expert doctor. Now, if you go to a doctor with a disease and the doctor is a good doctor, will he leave any trace of that disease in you?
No.
No. A very good doctor and make sure every single trace of that disease is gone. So this is how Krishna deals with us. But you see, in the beginning, it may be that, we're not ready to have, because in the end, Krishna will take away everything, actually, so that you'll completely surrender to him. But we have to be in quite an advanced position before that will happen. So it's not that, that Krishna will take away everything from everybody in the beginning. No, he may, but you have to be very advanced for Krishna to do that. So in the beginning, Krishna will, whatever situation you have, Krishna will act in a way as to try and get you to be a better devotee. Sometimes that may mean that some things are taken away. In some cases, it may mean that some things are given. I have godbrothers that are quite wealthy. It just depends on the particular mentality and the advancement of that devotee. Krishna may give or Krishna may not give, depending on the position of that devotee. But one thing you can be assured of is that Krishna will act in such a way as to do the best to increase your devotional attitude. That's what Krishna will do. But in the end, Krishna will take away everything. That's true. But you have to be very advanced for that. So that's not the usual thing. The usual thing is Krishna will allow you to get what your karma is supposed to give you. But at the same time, he will prod you a bit and, may make adjustments in your life a little bit to get you to be a better devotee. So that won't always mean that he takes everything away. It may mean that you get more, actually. Or it may mean that he takes one little thing away here or one little thing away there. Is that all right?
Yes, thank you, Prabhuji. Richa Mataji, would you like to ask your questions?
If I'm not taking anyone's time, then yeah, sure.
Fire away.
We've already released anyone who wants to go can. And if you want to ask a question, you're welcome to stay. And we don't mind because I like answering questions.
So basically, when we talk about like when Krishna is taking away things from us, like there's actually a particular shloka. It was one of my favorite shloka. I've actually misplaced it, which actually represented that Krishna says that the one who's dear to him, he'll first take his funds away, then family, then wealth. Slowly of such a deprived person, he'll grant him the mercy of his devotion. This is what the shloka, the translation is. But then does that mean that like the qualities of devotees are basically that they should have love and compassion for everyone and towards everything? So does that mean that the person should not have those? Because like until I know, if you're a human, you're a devotee, you'll have such compassion, and such compassions will go through attachment. And if you don't have attachment, how will you connect to other devotees? And how will you initially connect to Krishna? Because if you give it all up, just thinking that Krishna will take it all away from you, so you have to be prepared, then you will not be able to go further in your devotional activities. So it's kind of a bit contradictory.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yes. You see, as I was explaining, that Krishna only takes everything away from an advanced devotee, a very advanced devotee. For others, for people, for devotees like you and me, we've got our karma and we've got our life situation or whatever, and Krishna will allow that karma to flow in a way that will enhance your devotion. When we become serious, the karma that we experience is not ordinary. Krishna takes charge of it and uses it to actually extract our anarthas. So in some cases, it may mean you get more. And in some cases, it may mean that Krishna takes this away or he takes that away. But the idea is that Krishna does that to increase our devotion. And as for attachment, there's nothing wrong with attachment. But the thing is, we have to be attached to the right things, to be attached to devotees, to the spiritual master, to Krishna. These are good attachments. But to be attached to the material body of another person, or a material situation, or material possessions, or wealth, these things which are material, is not good to be attached to them. Why? Because they will bind you to the material world. We have to transfer, because you're going to be attached to something. Everyone is going to be attached to something. You can't avoid it, because that's our nature. But the thing is, let's be attached to the right thing. Let's be attached to Krishna and Krishna's devotees. Then that attachment will enhance our devotion and help us to make progress. But if we're attached to material things, it'll only cause us pain at some stage, because it's material. It'll be removed at some stage, and it'll cause us pain. So therefore, we have to be attached in the right way, even to family members and these things. We have to see them as spirit souls, as Krishna's parts and parcels, actually, and we're compassionate. We deal out of duty very nicely to do the best we can for them, but also we have to be detached. Because if you met the spirit soul who's in the body of your daughter or your husband on the street, you wouldn't recognize them, because our attachment is to the body. So we have to understand that relationships which are built on bodily attachments, the relationship will be broken at some point. So we're compassionate and we're careful to deal very nicely and properly as best we can. But in the back of our minds, we should all understand that sooner or later this attachment will be broken, and I have to be ready for that. Let me be attached to Krishna. Is that all right, Richard?
Yeah, I get it. So does that mean that the nature and the energy, it works separate from Krishna, even though it is from Krishna?
You see, it's a question of motivation. It's a question of where is our consciousness? If our consciousness is flowing in material, then we have to be wary, we have to be careful, you know, because when it flows in the material, it's usually for us, for our sense gratification. But when the consciousness flows in the spiritual, you know, when we see relatives as Krishna's devotees who are not ready to be devotees yet, or, you know, people we meet in the street, or we bump, you know, we buy produce from, you know, people we bump into, those people are also Krishna's parts and parcels, you know, and we have to be cognizant of that and do anything we can to help them. And relatives and people like this who are part of our families, you know, we have to be good family members and do our duty and be compassionate. But at the same time, we have to recognize, you know, that they may not be ready for Krishna consciousness yet, and we shouldn't give them problem over that. We just be good family member and, you know, deal with them very nicely and hope, you know, we give them prasadam whenever we can and hope that they become devotees. Do you see? So it's a question of our consciousness when we deal. Because after all, Krishna's material nature is also Krishna's energy. And if we use it properly, it becomes spiritual again. So we have to learn to see Krishna in everything, actually. Is that all right, Richard?
Yeah, that's actually a very clear idea. Now that I realize that I probably don't even know Krishna like a nail on my body. I don't even know him that much. There's a lot yet to discover and to understand.
Krishna is the material energy, but the thing is he's not present in it, but it's his energy. And if we use it in his service, again, it becomes spiritual. That makes sense to you?
So it's like that Krishna is not actually present in the materialistic life, but if we take it in a good way, he will still be there for us. Like he wouldn't leave us and go.
Krishna's there in everything, but if we use things which appear to be material in Krishna's service, they become spiritual again.
Oh, okay, yeah, I get that.
Okay, Kitika, are we done?
I have two more things, but Prabhuji, you have the time?
Yeah, I have the time.
Okay. So like material, I was just comparing and thinking about it. So somebody told me this Thai curry is really nice. And I've never eaten it before. And you must try it, and it's out of this world, and you'll experience a burst of all the different tastes. And she went on and on and on about it. So I said, okay, fine. So I took one spoon. I mean, it was not superb for me. So I said, maybe the second spoon would be nice. I kept on drinking it till the end. And I couldn't get the taste of what she was describing. So I was thinking material nature of things is like that. We are indulging. We want to enjoy it. But we don't get what we have been promised. And I think the spiritual world would be that just one. And then when we had the verse about I'm the taste of water. So I took a red capsicum that day and I ate it and I said, wow, this is delicious. And it's not the first time. I've been eating red capsicum all my life. So it's, wow, this is superb. So I guess when you spiritualize things, when you see Krishna, even in material things, you will enjoy it. But if you're not...
But we have to be, Kitika, we have to be careful about that.
Yes.
Because what we're experiencing there is we are connecting the tongue with its sense object. So that actually is material. If it's not offered to Krishna,
yes,
then it's a material experience. And those kinds of experiences will bind us to the material nature. So we have to be very careful about that, actually. When we're connecting the senses with their objects, that is certainly material. And it may be very nice, but if you keep eating the capsicum, eventually the taste will not be the same. It tastes great. Actually, that's a symptom of the mode of passion. In the beginning, it tastes like nectar, and in the end, it tastes like poison. But if it's offered to Krishna, then we appreciate. Yeah, so that's the key element, actually, to appreciate that this has been offered to Krishna, and it tastes wonderful. That makes the experience Krishna conscious. But if we just eat the capsicum because we like it, because it titillates our tongue, then that's a material experience. So again, we have to see that difference. Is it tied to Krishna, or is it tied to me and my sense gratification? Is that right?
That's right. And the soup, the Thai soup.
Thai soup. Was it
is-
offered to Krishna? That's my first question.
No, it was not. And it didn't give any satisfaction. So I guess that is what we are looking for in materialism,
Yes.
material
You're
world.
looking for the
We want to
satisfaction.
enjoy, but we are not getting it.
Yes. But you can't get it. And even if you do get it, it doesn't last long.
Yeah.
It
It doesn't
isn't
taste.
exactly what you want it to be. So that is material. And that we should learn to reduce in our life, to spiritualize it. Offer the capsicum to Krishna, then enjoy it. Yes?
Yes, Prabhuji. I will not ask my second thing because Veena Mataji has raised her hand.
Okay.
Veena
Veena?
Mataji, continue.
Well, thank you so much. We're taking up so much of your time
That's okay. That's what we're here for.
to answer our questions. Just a very quick one. You said that Krishna cannot be connected to material.
So it cannot be connected to?
On the material platform.
It can if we use it in Krishna's service. If we use anything in Krishna's service, it becomes spiritualized and it reconnects it to Krishna.
Yeah, but I heard that Krishna is completely separate from material because when I was
Yes, it's his external energy. He's not personally present in it, but it's his energy.
yeah. So we have the Paramatma in our hearts. So
Yes.
this is really material. So how does that happen? Because Paramatma is spiritual. So how do we have Paramatma in the super soul in our hearts?
Yeah, because the super soul in the heart is there to help you run your material experience. Krishna is the overseer and the permitter. He allows you to do what you want and he makes it possible for you. And also he's the witness to your activities. So the super soul is required so that you can get your material experience. That material energy, that material nature is being supervised by the super soul for you so that you can get the things done you want to do.
Because I was under the impression that Krishna cannot interact with material. He has to do that through the agency of Lord Shiva.
No, actually Krishna can do anything through any medium. That's what makes him the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But at the same time, Krishna's material energy is not conscious. Krishna is conscious of it, but it itself, the table in front of you is not conscious. But Krishna is conscious of everything. Do you see the distinction? Krishna is there in the material nature, but he's not bound by it. He's conscious of it. Bound by it, we're bound by it. And when Krishna is there as the super soul in the heart, he's allowing you to do the things you want to do and making the material energy respond so that you get what you want through the material energy. Does that help?
Yeah, kind of. I think I've got to think about it a bit more to understand.
Yeah.
Because,
We need a conversation about that, Beena, not just one question and answer. We need to have a conversation. Because it's not so easy to understand how Krishna can be the source of the material nature, but at the same time, he's not present within it.
Yes, that's the confusing part.
Yeah, that's confusing. He's conscious of it.
Yeah,
he's conscious of it.
I thought he's very aloof from, although he maintains the material world, he's very aloof.
Yes, he's aloof. And the proof of that is that Mahavishnu is sleeping.
Yeah. So I think
in other words, he doesn't directly interact with it. He has agents to do that for him.
Yeah, like Sadashiv.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Shiva.
Exactly.
I think probably, like you said, we probably need more.
Yeah, we need to have a conversation about it, not just one question and answer. Because it's easy to understand.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Will it do for now?
Yes, for now it'll be sufficient.
Okay.
Hare Krishna, any more questions or comments? Okay, I think there are no more questions.
Okay, I think we're done.
We are done. Dandavat Pranam, Prabhuji. Thank you so much for your time and sorry for juicing out, for really.
No, it's okay. I feel bad because it's late for you. It's like 10 to 10 there, isn't it?
No, Prabhuji, I'm in London, so I
Oh,
can afford. But
for some people,
Kenya,
it's late.
like Ravi Prabhuji and Dennis Kiplakat and Shashwin, that is Lata Mataji, and
Yeah,
Kumar
it's
Prabhu.
late for them.
Yeah.
So I
I
apologize.
apologize. I
But
apologize.
we did release them. They said we did say they could go if they wanted to.
That's right. Yeah, and I guess we really get our we wait for Sunday to ask all these questions
Really
and
get
share
into
our
it.
realizations. So we'll have more next week. So let's unmute and let's chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra once to glorify Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vancha kalpa tarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.
Srila Prabhupada ki
Pad ki jai.
Shyamanand Krishna Das Prabhuji ki
Jai.
Hope you have a wonderful week. I look forward to seeing you next week.
Yes, Prabhuji, if possible, we would like you to come in midweek or any other time that you are available, because this is such an important text, and I think we
Yes.
understand better. The way you explain it is good. So if you have time, please let us know.
Let's see.
Okay, Prabhuji. Okay.
Okay. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Veena Mataji, thank you for putting your video on for a few minutes. At least we now know, if we meet on the street, I know who you are. Hare Krishna, thank you for joining. And we please continue. It's the same link, same time every day, and kindly share if you have anybody else who's interested. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank
Hare
you.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Richa, sorry, it's late for you as well. I didn't mention your name.
No, it's okay. It's fine. I guess it was so better interacting with devotees. It felt like home.
Yeah. As Prabhuji mentioned, we have lost the concept of time when we are discussing Krishna. This is his
Yeah. It's just amazing.
Yeah, I have to go back to the material world, open the door, and the material things are waiting. for me.
That's how it is, I guess.
Okay, see you tomorrow, Richa. Tomorrow we
you.
have Pran Hari Prabhuji, so that would be exciting as well. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Danvat Pranam.
Dhanavad.